Welcome to the Life as an Observer podcast. My name is Ryan Bean. I am your host in self-observation. This podcast is an exploration of physical and non-physical self through discussion around yoga, meditation, self-improvement, self-realization, and practices that elevate the mind-body-soul connection. Let's start observing. This episode of Life as an Observer is made possible by patron support. If you'd like to support this program, you can visit patron.podbean.com/lifeasanobserver to learn more. Well, welcome to another episode of Life as an Observer. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I'm really excited to kind of share today's message with you and kind of talk a little bit deeper about how we choose unavailable partners. But before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you to those who are patrons of the page. You find that on Podbean. It's just Podbean and then you go to the / for Life as an Observer. So I'll put the link down below, but it's just patron.podbean.com / Life as an Observer, and you can get a lot of really cool content. I've been trying to record my breathwork sessions as I do them, at least the ones that I do live, and offering those kind of as additional content on the patron side, and it starts as low as $2 a month. There is some clinician links, I suppose, or areas that are specific to clinicians who are working in mental health, or even those who are working in the medical world for pre-anxiety, breath work, and just some other things that I'll be releasing on that space of the podcast, specifically around breath work and meditation, just kind of getting ready for those. I have a few things coming up that I wanted to share with you too. I've been doing a lot of traveling. Now here I am back in southern Utah, but as I record this, but we're in over 100 degrees, and I'm kind of decided to go to the house today rather than staying in the van, as it's quite warm. But I'm going to be making some trips to get out of southern Utah, at least for several weeks. So I'm going to be looking to be in Colorado next week. So I'll be in Silverton, Colorado, with my friend Jesse Coomer, who has been on the podcast. So maybe we'll get down and chatting again while I'm there, because we're planning a retreat. We're calling it Inspire Fest, and that's going to be happening in October. And I'd like for you to just kind of take a link. I'll put it down below, but just take a look at what we're going to be offering. We're actually launching that, depending on when you listen to this, but we're launching it at the end of this week. So on the 10th of June. And this particular retreat is going to be happening October 7th, 8th, and 9th in Austin, Texas. So if you're in that area, or if you want to come hang out with a couple breath workers and learn a little bit more, this is really kind of themed about bringing our true self forward, and kind of the peaceful warrior theme. And I'm just really excited to collaborate with my friend Jesse. So I'd probably look for a podcast with him and I really, really soon, as we're traveling there. We'll probably spend some time together and chat about what's going to be happening at Inspire Fest. So that's happening next week. I'll be in Colorado, coming back for just 2 days. And then I'm headed up to Eden, Utah, northern Utah, for the Divine Assembly's Summer Revival. This is the Mushroom Sacrament, and them doing their annual revival. Lots of education around psychedelic-assisted therapy with psilocybin. I think there's some practitioners there of combo, lots of meditation, breath work. I'm going to be talking about ketamine-assisted breath work, be hosting Wim Hof Method Fundamentals both days at that particular event. And you can get your tickets at summerrevival.org. It's kind of a camp out, especially if you're trying to get out of the hot weather like me. It'll be a really nice place to come do ice baths and just to kind of get into the lake and camp out for a little bit. Come by and see me at the booth. I'll be there with my partner. We'll be chatting about ketamine-assisted breath work and just ketamine in general for psychotherapy, and just enjoying the evening, kind of being there for the music and supporting our friends at the Divine Assembly in their efforts to really bring psychedelics in the forefront of therapy. So really excited for that. I come back for, maybe a week maximum, and then I'm headed on the road the week after July 4th, so July 5th, up to Seattle. I will be up in Seattle meeting a couple ketamine clinics along the way, specifically with Dr. Tammy at BioThrive. And then I'm going to be at a retreat with my good friend Devin, and it's a women's retreat. So if you're at all interested in being at the women's retreat, Devin has that on her page. I'll put a link since I'm talking about it, but I'm sure I will be talking about her in the weeks to come. Maybe we can get her on the podcast to chat about what she's doing at this particular women's retreat in the Seattle-Tacoma area. So if you're up in the Pacific Northwest and you're interested in doing some Wim Hof Method fundamentals with me, and if you're interested in joining a women's retreat, I can get you information on that. I'll put some links down below as I find time to chat with Devin. Maybe we'll have her on the podcast. So going into the fall, several retreats lined up, and I will post them in the show notes as they become available, as tickets become available, and when you can book them. I know I have several online offerings that are going live, including a Vipassana for Beginners course happening in August, and some other breathwork stuff that we're doing. So lots happening in the world of my life, but we're here really to kind of talk about why we choose unavailable partners, right? That's probably what guided you in here to chat about. And I kind of want to start the conversation today just by, again, finding just a lot of gratitude for those who are subscribing, who are listening, who are passing this podcast, who are commenting. It makes a world of difference to me and also to the podcast to see it grow. And I just had some new stickers made and stuff. So if you end up subscribing and to the patron side, I have some new stuff I'm sending out, some swag for the show and whatnot. We'll also at all these events, I'll also have all that. But it's not even really just about the swag. It's just saying if you go onto my page, you'll see kind of what the goals are. And the goals are really to be in this life of service and to talk about things that are sometimes not easy to talk about. Not just with yoga and meditation, but really what we do with our lives and what we do with our lifestyle. Now, this podcast is evolving, maybe just as I am too, and allowing there to be new topics as I become more vulnerable. So today is one of those, about choosing emotionally unavailable partners and why we do that. And this one hits home for me. It's definitely something that I have been known to do. And I want to start today's particular podcast with a quote from, of course, my teacher Ram Dass. I just think that he has so much knowledge in some of these areas, but he said, I think in relationships, you create an environment with your own work on yourself, which you offer to another human being to use to grow in the way they need to grow. You keep working. You become the soil, moist and soft and receptive, so the person can grow the way they need to grow. Because how do you know how they should grow? I think in relationships, you create an environment with your own work. And that's kind of what he says, is like we really need to keep doing our own work so that we can create an environment for others to thrive if they are to join us. And we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper today about what it actually means to be emotionally unavailable. But we need to create an environment not only for our own healing, as we'll talk about, but also one that is conducive to others, not one that is resistant and feeds other wounds. So let's talk about emotionally unavailable partners. Well, why do we do this? Why do we do this? Well, I've asked myself this a few times, and actually I've even talked about it to myself, and not just emotionally, but physically unavailable or spiritually unavailable, or there's so many different ways we can classify unavailable, but really we attract what we're familiar with. I think that's number one, is we just attract what we're familiar with. And that familiarity is not necessarily in our conscious mind. It may be very much in our subconscious mind, whether that be something we saw with our parents or close friends, or just really the relationships that we've been experiencing around us. For many times we see what's happening, and that creates this sense of fear. The amygdala sort of lights up and says, ooh, that looks very similar that looks very similar. That person feels a lot like that other person or that other situation. And so we attract what we're familiar with. Whether those be unconscious wounds that want to heal. So maybe they're coming to the surface saying, I want to heal. I see this person is just like who my last one was or the one that I saw before. And it wants to heal. It wants to be seen. But instead of seeing it, noticing it, and saying, that looks like the same, we actually say, ooh, this feels very familiar. I could slide right into familiarity. Who has done that? Now, you can raise your hand if you want here. You could say, oh my gosh, that was me. But we slide into what is familiar rather than going into the area which is unfamiliar. And that particular person that wants to slide in might just be the reminder. Now, those of you who are subscribers and to Law of Attraction, know I talk a lot about that. But sometimes we see what we're calling in, but we also see the opposite of what is wanted. And because the opposite of what is really wanted sometimes shows up and it feels very familiar, we open the door and let it in. Have you done that? Have you opened the door and let something in when you knew that it wasn't exactly what you wanted, but it was familiar? Ooh. I'm raising my own hand here. So another is that sometimes we feel like we're just, not enough. And I hate to say it like that, but we feel like we're just not enough for something new. And we feel like we can't have a healthy relationship. So that's number 2, is just where we just kind of are stuck in that wound of not enoughness. I don't know if that's really a word, but we're just going to call it not enoughness. And in not enoughness, we say, well, I would really like that, but I don't know that I deserve it. I watched myself do this as I started getting older, started losing my hair, started, not looking as I used to, changing my workout from that of lifting to that of more yoga and movement, starting catching gray hairs and just everything about me changing. But the problem is my wounds kept wanting me to call in that that isn't wanted, the opposite of what is wanted, really, the opposite of what is wanted. Calling that in hopes that it would somehow fill those wounds. And of course, I thought I knew what I wanted, right? I started to do the activities that I know, doing focus wheels or doing, manifesting techniques and calling in what I thought that I wanted. But the problem is what was familiar kept showing up. And it's because these unconscious wounds were maybe a little bit louder than my manifesting. So what does it feel like to have a healthy relationship? Well, I don't know. I think that I thought that I've had a few of them, and maybe you thought that you did too, or maybe you when you think of a healthy relationship, you think of the one that got away, right? And that's because that's the one that feels most good in this moment. Now, I can tell you that I've had several of those that feel really, really good, and I'm still friends with several of those people, and when I see them, there's still a desire there that wants to call them in. It wants to call them in and say, hey, I really enjoyed our time together, and I think we could make this work. But the problem is, here I am calling in maybe the opposite of what is wanted, because think about it. They're off on their own journey now with maybe a new partner. They have evolved, they've changed. But yet we still call that in because it had this one moment or this 1 week or this 1 month that was beautiful and wonderful, and that is what is wanted. But the truth is, what isn't wanted is the reason why the relationship ended. Now, not always. I can think of a few people off the top of my head who I would certainly enjoy a relationship with now. It doesn't mean that I'm ready for it, but it means that I would enjoy it. And maybe it's also what is familiar and that just feels comfortable. So we have to sit down in those quiet moments of meditation to really decide, am I calling in what's familiar or am I calling in what is wanted? Am I satisfying the wounds that are deep within me? Or am I satisfying the subconscious thought that I'm just not worthy of actually a healthy relationship, so I have to call in something that is unavailable? The third I guess the third point here is kind of a lack of self-love. Now, this term self-love, right? We're using it all the time. And actually, if you've watched me on Instagram, I just posted something. I'm going to be trying to do an interview with actually the Mayaway, with the CEO of the Mayaway here in the very near future. But they gave me a small business grant, basically to put a wrap around the back of my van. It has a box breathing, and it has says love yourself more in 20 seconds, and then it has a box breathing, and then it has a QR code to my landing page. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can kind of go there yourself without actually having to see my van. You can see it like in one of my reels, but then you can click the link. But I created a breath work and meditation that's around self-love. It has some affirmations and kind of a beautiful thing that's on YouTube now. But what does that mean? What does it mean to have a lack of self-love? Because, right, we all love each other, right? We love ourselves, and we exercise and we eat right. But is that really what self-love is? And I think that we look at the on the surface what self-love is. Like, I'm doing yoga and I'm meditating and I'm doing all these things that show self-love, but what about not needing dependency on someone? Not being codependent is also an act of self-love, saying I have everything that I need. I don't need anyone else to help fulfill me, to heal me, to soothe me. I don't need anything else other than the stuff that I'm doing with myself to work on myself. And this is me loving myself, earning my own money, maybe, me spending time alone and being okay with being alone, because how could I possibly be lonely? I have me. I have all that I am that is amazing, loving me. And if you don't feel that way, well, then that's the area that you work on so that you don't call in someone who is unavailable emotionally. So sometimes we get into these scenarios where we give up who we are truly just so that we can be in a relationship. Even if it is an unavailable relationship, we give up sometimes our hobbies. We give up some of our desires. Our desires like wanting a partner to travel with and do activities with and cook with, or being in a space of friendship. We give that up just to have someone, anyone, whether that be in our house, to be in our lives, or to be in our bed. We give up who we think we are so that we can satisfy that piece of us, which for the most part is only the key to unlocking our self-love. But you see, the door to our self-love is never locked. We think that we're getting the key from someone, but the door is always unlocked for us. So what does this look like? What does this look like? What does a person who is emotionally unavailable look like? How can you recognize them in a lineup? Well, it's a little hard, but you have to begin to step beyond your thinking mind, step beyond your heart's desire, and move into the space of the soul, this place of the vital energy where you start to say, okay, I feel something else. This person maybe is someone who will ghost you. You know, you write them and they're wondering why they're not writing you back. And it's not because they don't like you. It's because they're probably unavailable. And that is how they're expressing themselves, to be unavailability. Trust me, friends, I have done this where I've been very interested in someone, but then when it becomes like where the road is leading to be more serious, I need to pull back. And so I will sometimes write very small messages. I've watched myself do this, that don't answer questions completely, that I wouldn't call it ghosting, but I would say that create a boundary between the conversation, between me and between seeing each other again. So that's in a way ghosting. I guess maybe it's more of a detachment. So saying, well, enjoy yourself. I'm sorry that's happening to you, but I'm not involved in that. And so there's this sense of detachment. I have other things. I have stuff going on. Very unspecific. These are signs, friends. These are signs that saying this person is emotionally unavailable. and showing that they're not really serious about you. I actually had this the other day, and I want to share this, and who knows, she might be listening, but I had asked a woman who I'm interested in to go out with me, to go to an event. And we'd planned 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, got tickets, I was going to go. And the day of, I get a text message that said, I'm really tired from last night. She was doing something else, not with me. I don't think I'll be able to make it today. Now, I will tell you, friends, I was heartbroken because I felt as though I was serious, but she was not. And I had made that assumption that things were good, but yet I believe that that was a indication of not being serious. Just saying, hey, I don't know how to do this, so I'm just going to give a statement to detach myself and to show you that I'm not serious about being with you. My response was, well, the ball's in your court now. If you'd like to do something, then that's on you, but it's okay. Basically, it didn't make her feel bad, but how often have we done this where we make up a reason to not be with someone because it feels like a commitment? It feels like it too much, right? Oh, that one was a hard one to share because it's personally to me, and it kind of reinforces our narrative of not enoughness, right? I mean, when we feel that, whatever we'd call it, maybe ghosting, or we'd call it, standing you up or whatever, it reinforces our not enoughness, and our not enoughness then shows up like another wound that says we can't have a healthy relationship. So the work has to continue to happen. We have to do it so often. That particular scenario caused me to do a lot of work. No one's fault. I'm not pointing fingers, but just saying that was a trigger for me to then do more work. So good thing we have the tools, right? And we have the tools that we can do this and reassociate that experience, which I did immediately. I reassociated that experience and actually had a great time going with my friend. But I had to reassociate that with a good feeling rather than leaving it in that place of not enoughness. So what else does that person look like? Well, there's also no deep conversation that happens usually within those people. It's just you ever know like someone and you're like, oh, we hit it off right away. We started talking about things that are important and you continue to go down that route. Well, when it becomes where the deep conversation starts to stop and it becomes very topical, know that is probably an indication of what a person who is emotionally unattached looks like. There is some avoidance that happens, but there's also, all kinds of avoidance that happens. There's also things like not being vulnerable when you chat, not really going deep, not trusting. And then there's also these selfish acts to protect themselves, whether they're a narcissist or not. Some people will say, well, why do I attract narcissists? Well, wounds show up differently. You may not be. Doesn't mean you're going to attract like and like together. You might attract the opposite. Your wound and their wound coming together. You're the nurturer, they're the narcissist, and then here you are together feeding each other's wounds in this dance of two wounded individuals who can't show up completely. So, what do we do then? How not to attract those kind of people? Well, the first thing is you got to work on yourself always. You have to say, well, if I have to do my meditation every day. I have to do my breath work. I do my ice baths. I work on my own wounds, whether it be through therapy or through psychedelic assisted therapy or just your own self-exploration to know thyself. When you can know thyself, then you have the ability to show up for yourself and recognize when these old familiars start to come back in. You can start to say, I see you. I love you. I don't want to play cards with you, but I see you and I love you, but I love myself more. And I'm going to go ahead and say no to that. How many times have we made a decision about a person or a job or a move or whatever, and that same day or that week or whatever, we get the challenge of contrast that comes in. Maybe it's another person saying, but I really miss you, but I really want you. Or they start to spend more time with you, or you start to see a small effort, or you see a boss wanting to give you a raise, or you see these things that appear like a good thing to try to change your mind. The thing is, this is the way that the law of attraction works. You will begin to draw in those things because here you are making an inspired action decision. This is, and when I teach manifesting courses, this is step number 3. You get clear on your what, you get clear on your why. And number 3 is you take inspired action immediately. You don't wait. You don't hope for reinforcement. You just take action, and it's usually really, really risky. It's usually really scary, and it causes you to move into discomfort. When you do that, sometimes you will also be met with what is not wanted. You decide to leave a relationship, and all of a sudden that person's being really nice. All of a sudden that person is showing up in a different way, and you're like, well, maybe I'll give him another chance. Maybe I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. But this is really just showing up in this kind of dance of unavailability, drawing you back in to try to sway you. You have to stick with your inspired action, friends. If you're feeling as though you're not appreciated, if you're feeling like you're with a detached person, if you feel like there's no vulnerability, there's no deep conversation, they don't really want to be with you, and all of a sudden when you make the decision to move into your own self-love and serve you, and then they show back up, this is not an indication that they've changed. This is simply the universe taunting you with contrast. You got to stick with your guns. You got to stick with your guns. I'm not here to tell you got to quit your job tomorrow, and I'm not telling you to leave your marriage. But what I'm saying is, if you see this and you've seen this for years and there's been no change, and all of a sudden when you make a decision to make change for you, and you're met with contrast that is not like what has always been there, don't let it sway you. Stick with your guns. You can do this. So the second thing about not attracting, so work on yourself always, but also know the signs. So we kind of talked about them. Don't be on autopilot, okay? Don't be on autopilot saying, okay, well, this feels good, just moving through. Some days are good, some days are bad. Some days I feel loved, some days I don't. But, there's more good than bad. Listen, if you see signs, take action. Do it immediately. There's only so much of this incarnation, this particular life that you get to live. And for you to be unsure is certainly going to draw you into a place that is going to make you feel stressed and anxious. I don't know. I don't know if I'm loved. I don't know if I'm happy. I don't know if I need more. Take inspired action and trust the universe, trust yourself, trust your heart. Not on autopilot, not just running. So here's the part where I get to be super vulnerable. What does an emotional, unavailable person show up in their role? Okay, so we talked about what they look like, but what is the role? And sometimes those those unavailable people show up as already married. They show up as someone you meet on vacation, the last couple of days of your vacation. Maybe they live far away. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they're someone that you meet as they're recovering from an illness. Maybe there's someone that you wouldn't necessarily talk to. These people show up in my life often. They show up in my life often, and there is certainly attraction. There's certainly connection, but there's also that piece of me that says, what am I doing? This is an emotionally or physically or spiritually unavailable person who's showing up in my life, reinforcing my wound. It doesn't mean they're not good people. It doesn't mean that you couldn't potentially have a good relationship with them should the situation change, but it is not your responsibility to change the situation. It is not your responsibility to guide or lure them or be the nurturer, the healer for them. You have to accept them as they are, in the way that you are, and if those places don't meet in a way of being available weekly, daily, hourly, whatever that means for you and what your needs are, then it is not a healthy connection. You may say, well, when we talk once a week, it's really great. Well, what happens when you want to spend time with them and they can't because, well, they live thousands of miles away, or they're, hiding from their spouse or something along those lines? What does that mean for you and the way you're treating yourself? Well, that goes back to step 3, where there's a lack of self-love there. I've bounced back and forth through this. Is this showing up in a new way? Do I need to be the assistant here? Can I help them? Or am I really just self-sabotaging? And really, self-sabotage of something that's controllable, like a sad situation, is kind of where you become the unavailable soul yourself. So just saying, well, I can control this sad situation. I can decide when I want to see them and how I want to see them. And there's no real commitment there. But it's certainly self-sabotaging rather than that of a controlled, happy one. So saying, well, I see this person all the time now, and there's not a lot of control. So self-sabotage is a controlled, sad situation, or would you rather choose happiness in an out-of-control situation? You may not have control of the person or what they do or how they think, but you see them often, and you're meeting in a place that Ram Dass calls the beloved, where you love yourself, they love their self, and you're meeting in a place that is joined consciousness, where you can dance as two to meet in the place of one. But when you're in the place of one, noticing two souls. So really, self-sabotage is where we find ourselves a lot of the time, where we say, well, this will do for now. But at least I know that this will do for now, and I'm not expecting a whole lot. Or can we say, you know what? I actually deserve a lot more than this. I don't care if it's out of control. I don't care if, but I get to see the person often, and I can be happy, and I can find love and be in the beloved, rather than that place that says, well, we'll never be more than this, but it feels okay because it's controllable. I can't really get hurt. I can't really get hurt. I can't really get hurt. Well, what does that really mean, to really get hurt? Do we take risks? Certainly. We take risks in every relationship that we move into, whether it be a professional or romantic. We take risks because we can't control how others feel or how they feel about us or what they do with their lives. All we can really work on is us. So, for the most part, that's usually where I find myself, is just saying I'm totally happy with just working on me so I can show up for others as it does happen. But it doesn't mean that there are not times when I don't want a romantic relationship or having time to spend with somebody that's on a more romantic level than just simply friends. So we have to decide what is best for us. Do we want to meet in the beloved, in a place where the two become one? Or are we okay with just working on ourselves and saying, you know what? I have a lot to heal here, and I really can't show up for someone else because then I'm the emotional unavailable one. You see, we started off by saying, why do we attract unavailable people, emotionally unavailable? Well, for the most part, it's because we're like attracts like. We're already emotionally unavailable, and if we really want that, we have to go back to healing our wounds, loving ourselves more, and recognizing what that unavailability looks like. If it means we're really, really into our work, then that's what it is. We don't have space. If it means that we really like to travel and like to be on the road and we don't want to really be tied down, then that's what it is. Recognizing it and allowing it to be there, not shaming it, just saying this is what it is. The thing is when we get into that space where we can be vulnerable and just say, this is who I am. This is who I would like to be with. And this is what I would like our relationship to feel like. You start to attract that. You start to attract maybe like attracts like, but you also start to attract the opposite of what is wanted. The real work, friends, it's done in the privacy of your heart through meditation and really saying which one is actually showing up today. Who is it that's showing up for me today? Like attracts like, or the opposite of what is wanted and familiar. We began today's podcast today, but just by hearing Ram Dass, and I want to repeat this today just at the end here. I think in relationships, you create an environment with your own work on yourself, which you offer to another human being to use to grow in that way they need you to grow. You keep working. You become soil, moist and soft and receptive, so the person can grow in that way. They need to grow because how do you know how they should grow? How do you know how they should grow? Being ready as soil for yourself, being ready as soil with nutrients and lush and without rocks, without things that can cause damage, without those blockages that show up in relationships. Working on yourself so that when someone does come to that soil of your heart, that it can flourish and grow. Not be met with resistance, not be met with rocks, to be met with that nutritious love that we want ourselves to feel and that we can eventually share with others. Thanks for joining today on Life as an Observer. I really appreciate you listening today. I will be having some guests here really, really soon. If you are interested in being a part of the podcast, certainly reach out to me. I'm interested in talking to all kinds of unique people. If you're at any of these festivals that I'm going to be at or workshops that I offer, and you have a story you want to tell, I would love to chat with you. So thank you for joining. Those who have joined, their names are in the show notes below. Those who have joined the patron piece of that, much, much, much gratitude for all of you. And see you on the next episode, the next podcast of Life as an Observer.